What's up, folks? Welcome back to the SG3 podcast, the podcast named for an Indian who threw a football and had his middle school teacher mesmerized. I'm your host, SG. It's my guy Shuffy from Portland. He's back on the show. Most of y'all have been wanting him, and ask and ye shall receive. Shuffy, what's up?
Not a whole lot, man. Beard's out, so it's getting fall. Cowboys keep winning. I'm not shaving. I can tell you that right now. So we're gonna ride.
I kind of like it.
Until they break my heart. It's the way it's gonna go.
I kind of like it. No Shave November's coming up, so even I'm not going to be shaving. I'll shave once before November to let a fresh cut come in beforehand, because October's a pretty big deal in the Hindu culture. We've got a lot of festivals coming up, so kind of looking nice for that. But the other stuff, then afterward. Anywho, please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below and follow us both on our Twitters. You know where to find us. He retweets it on his page. His Facebook page is also blowing up. Vice versa on mine. So you'll find him. Heck, you can even find us in Twitter Spaces. Come out and join us on weeknights. Our friends Julie, Nimmer, Curtis, and the rest of the gang will be glad to welcome you in to the space. But we begin tonight's episode with a lot of controversy. Well, actually, it happened long ago, but Shuffy and I were busy with our personal lives that we weren't able to come on and talk about it. That is the Aaron Rodgers injury. So number 8, can't believe I'm saying that, number 8 of the New York Jets suffered a torn Achilles on the 4th play of the first game of the season, 75 seconds in. Rodgers will be out for this year. Dr. Neil Elatrosh performed the surgery, saying that Rodgers could return by January if all goes according to plan. We saw how Cam Akers was able to rush back from his Achilles injury. Not exactly the best thing to do, but if the body works like that, then God bless him. We're wishing Rodgers nothing but the best in his recovery. We're very glad that surgery went well. And again, hoping for nothing but good wishes. However, a very controversial tweet surfaced on X, as former ESPN anchor Keith Olbermann, who, let's be completely honest, has completely gone politically crazy, has sided with the vaccine. Because remember, Rodgers was less than truthful about his vaccination status, and Olbermann fired off a tweet directed at Rodgers, essentially implying that because he did not get the vaccine, he suffered the torn Achilles. Now, Olbermann has been known to go after athletes who do not side with his political views, including Riley Gaines in the Leah Thomas incident. And frankly, Olbermann's views have severely dipped, and his credibility has severely deteriorated in the last few years because people are realizing who the hell he is. I'm not going to say the word, but Shuffy, you know what word I'm talking about. And, well, frankly, I'm almost going to say he's lost his mind. And he's completely gone off the rails. And Shuffy, you've seen the story, of course. You're a football savant. That's why, of course, I love having you here. And the fact that you've been in the Twitter Spaces, you've talked about this. Our friends in the Twitter Spaces have also chimed in on this, and they agree with what we believe. But for the folks that don't know what you think, floor's yours.
So Keith Olbermann is he's a turd, man. That's me speaking kindly about him, I think. A few things. My favorite part about sports as a fan, and this is full spectrum: baseball, basketball, cricket, tennis. I don't care. I'll watch anything, right? Anything that's a competition, because politics has stayed out of competitions, right? And in most of these leagues, and an argument could be made against this, but most of these leagues, politics not affecting the way that you watch this game, right? Aside from the people that might get upset about the national anthem and the kneeling, that's your own business what you do and don't, agree with that these leagues are doing. But at the end of the day, sports it's non-political, man. There's a winner and a loser. There's rules, and the rules don't change, and you got to be the best to win it, period. So I hate when guys like Keith Olbermann get involved, because it's useless. It's people like him. They're not familiar with the space of the fandom, and then ultimately what it takes for these pros and the scrutiny that Rodgers deals with on a daily basis already, right? There's more Aaron Rodgers haters this year than ever. They're like, oh, there's no way he's going to be good for the Jets, right? I mean, you heard it from everyone. Oh, I don't know if I believe it. He's 40 years old, right? His last year at Green Bay.
A lot of stuff was similar with Tom Brady. Heck, I mean, of course, there were a lot of Brady haters when he was in New England, but when he went to Tampa Bay, it surged through the roof, and the outrage was palpable the moment the Buccaneers beat the Golden Child Mahomes in the Super Bowl. You had tweets saying that Brady was racist for winning in February, which
But what
is,
I loved
yeah,
about
it's
it
like
is
ridiculous.
it was sports. Tom Brady was just better. And
Yep.
that's the end of it, right? There's no political argument to be made. So when Keith Olbermann came after Aaron Rodgers, saying, "Oh, you didn't take his vaccine, that's why his Achilles tendon popped." No, his Achilles tendon popped. There's a 300 and something pound defensive tackle trying to pull him to the ground. He didn't want to go down, and his calf was planted on the ground. He was fighting it like he was doing a back squat at 300 pounds on one leg. That video, I don't know if you saw it slowed down. That was gnarly, man. You watch that Achilles tendon pop in slow motion.
Yeah,
Is
that was Leonard Floyd, and I know him all too well, having once worn this color jersey.
Yeah. No,
And
man,
yeah,
it's just physics, you know. And I
and
made
even
a
Floyd
joke.
was hurt. Floyd was visibly shaken after that when he heard
Yeah,
what
and I
happened.
made a joke. I was like, Aaron Rodgers should have been doing more calf raises, but I don't think there's enough calf raises in the world for you to survive that. You know, like, and it is what it is. Like I coach junior
Yeah,
varsity high school football, and we get kids get banged up every day. It happens. And that's the other thing about politics getting into sports. Like, no politician on the planet knows what it's like to go through a whole week of practice and throw your body at people, right? And try to protect yourself. And then go
right.
into a game when you've got adrenaline, right? And it's that much faster and it's that much harder every shot you take. And so, yeah, it really bothers me. That Keith Olbermann issue, he just needs to shut his mouth, frankly. And I'm not going to sit here and disrespect him and his brand. I mean, he's obviously a notable person in politics to the people that appreciate his form of journalism, which I don't know if I'd call that journalism anymore because it's not
Nope.
objective anymore. It's subjective to who pays him. But ultimately, yeah, like Rodgers, you know, go get your fifth booster, whatever, man. All that political talk. I just wish it'd stay out of sports. I really do because the game's better without it. Period.
Amen. And Rodgers, he took the high road in some respect, but unfortunately, I can't say the same for Olbermann. And I'm with you. I wish politics would stay the hell out of sports, just stay the hell away from anything except political world.
You watch the Pat McAfee show when they had Rodgers on
Yes,
and
I do.
they asked him about it. And he goes, "Bum." I was like, "That's all it is. It's all perfect, man. He's a bum. You know, that's perfect." So
that's a good way to say it. And unfortunately, we kind of agree that Olbermann probably going to get sensitive about it and go after it. So, hey, kudos to Rodgers. I actually thought the Jets were going to be good this year with him.
speaking
But
of that, we
yeah.
talked a little before the podcast about, you know, the Jets now.
Yeah.
And I'm a Cowboys fan, and you know that. And we dismantled the two teams in New York the first 2 weeks, right? And so I'm sure every Cowboys fan sitting here just itching, right? They're like, "Oh, we're so good," and I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
but we've kicked the crap out of a team that's got a glorified 16-year-old at quarterback with Zach Wilson,
Yeah,
and
about that.
the Giants' offensive line was non-existent, you know. So it's a really
Supposedly rebuilt.
yeah, no, they've got some work to do over there in New York. That's going to be an interesting one too to talk about. They play the Niners on tomorrow. So, but
Giants do,
anyway,
yeah.
no, the Jets. Garrett Wilson's fantasy stock for my fantasy friends that watch this and listen to some of the stuff we talk about fantasy tips.
Yeah,
Garrett Wilson,
get in on that.
yeah, Garrett Wilson was going to be should have been top 5, top 7 receivers in fantasy production this year. Period. There really isn't that much of a dominant threat at receiver outside of him on that roster. I would compare the Jets receiving room to the Pittsburgh Steelers receiving room. It's Pickens, right? And then you got Deontay Johnson, sprinkle him in. You got Randall Cobb, Lazard on the Jets. Like, you've got some guys there that'll be productive, but Garrett Wilson was it. And now that's a question mark for me. Is he still wide receiver 1? Yeah, I'm going to start him in the leagues I have him. But I'm not expecting 25-point games from him. I'm looking at 15, 16 points, maybe one tutty a game. Should be if they're doing their job conceptually and using him, because he's been great. Even with Zach Wilson, he's made a dent in the games that he's played in without Rodgers. But that's definitely something to be wary of. If you're in a tight matchup and you're between someone like Christian Kirk and Pickens, I put them on the same level now. Or excuse me, Garrett Wilson and Christian Kirk, they're similar in what they're going to be able to do, and that has a lot to do with where they are in the scheme and who's throwing them the ball.
It will be
So
interesting to see what happens with Garrett Wilson for the rest of the year. Like you mentioned, he's going into a game against New England in week 3, and we're well aware of what the Jets have done against the Patriots. 14 straight defeats. one of the more notable ones was the punt return by Marcus Jones for a touchdown near the end off of punter Braden Mann that elicited some reactions. But when you mentioned the New York teams, I think the problem with what's going on with the Cowboys, and we got to get into this one, for a variety of reasons. But the first part of it, they have certainly looked dominant in their first two games. Yet, if you listen to like ESPN and whatnot, and frankly, I'm not trying to impose it on anybody to do it because, hey, to his or her, their own. But it seems that they're reluctant to give the Cowboys credit, not just because they're play two bad teams, but the fact that most of the shows are in Bristol and in New York. Like there's a heavy bias towards New York, and the fact that of all teams, the Cowboys are doing it. You're hearing Stephen A. talk his crap, and matter of fact, we're going to get to Mr. Smith in just a moment. There's a whole lot of stuff I got to go off on, but he's saying that the Cowboys, again, what can go wrong will go wrong. Why? Excuse me. Why they're bloviating about being the Giants and Jets? My first thought is, if this was your Steelers doing this thing, this type of damage, you'd be running to the studio, bloviating, gloating, and would just continue to show your bias. And your hatred for the Cowboys stems from nothing more than a girl dumping you wearing a Tony Dorsett jersey. Let's make that very clear. You say you hate delusional fans. You're a Yankees fan, big guy. You're not exactly the most reasonable person. Take it away.
So the Cowboys, I'll make it short and sweet. Their defense is unbelievable. I will say that now. Diggs had a one-on-one against Garrett Wilson, PBU, knocked it down. He's in good position. I mean, all the questions about Dallas's defense is Diggs legitimate? Can you trust him in coverage? Yeah, I think he's just fine. He's a ball hawk, too. He went and got himself one, right? So the defense, the pass rush, our linebackers, if you're going to beat Dallas, if I'm an offensive coordinator in the NFL and I'm preparing for Dallas, you beat them in the flats with their outside linebackers and their middle linebackers. You got to beat them with the shallow cross. You kind of got to dink and dime your way across the field. That's how you beat Dallas. You're not going to beat them taking shots down the field because you're not going to have time in the pocket. I can't remember how many pressures it was on Daniel Jones. It was like 17 out of 22 dropbacks at one point in the game. So 5 times he threw the ball he could actually throw. So Dallas's defense is great. On offense, first win against New York, Dak didn't do anything crazy. He had like 150 yards pass. I don't remember what it was.
Sure.
Like our defense.
But sure, you don't always have to be 400 yards to win as long as you didn't turn it over, and he didn't turn it over. So you're
right.
Good.
And that was his biggest thing. So I think Dallas is legitimate number 2 in the NFC. Number 3, I'd say it's Niners, Philly, and Dallas right there. Those 3 teams for me. Now, the NFC South, I want to make sure we talked about that tonight because 3 of those teams are undefeated. And Ritter and Atlanta with Bijan, they're gnarly. And it's interesting because no one really talked about the NFC South preseason, and they never do. Carolina hasn't.
And they're never going to get into Atlanta. Let's be honest. Ever since what happened that night in Houston, the Falcons have pretty much been eradicated from the minds. That and what happened against the Dallas Cowboys. Remember, they had that big lead, and all of a sudden, Shuffy works some magic, and the Cowboys come back and win it.
I gave Jones a call, Jerry. He's my good buddy. No, just
you did.
The NFC right now. I know we need to get to Stephen A. The NFC is definitively the NFC East and South are obviously you got 3 teams that are 2-0 in those divisions. Washington is a stunner. I had no clue, and I owe the Washington fan base an apology because I said Washington's going to bring up the rear in that division, and here you go. New York's like hold the phone, like we can be worse. New York has no excuse to be that bad. Period.
Love it though.
I do. I love the NFL because this is the type of stuff that doesn't matter how well read and how much film you watch and how much news and media you read. It's just going to happen, and whatever happens. And so, like the Chiefs coming out losing on opening night. Vegas.
That was awesome for the Lions. Actually, good for them.
Freaking awesome, man! That made every fan in the NFL happy, except for the state of Kansas and Missouri, right? Like.
That and a lot of the networks because they were expecting the Chiefs to take out the Lions even without Chris Jones and Travis Kelce. And newsflash: just because you have the names doesn't mean you're gonna win all the games.
Kelce it's imperative that they have him on the field, and here's why: he requires a special assignment from a nickel or strong safety. Okay, you have to bracket him really, and you almost always you got to be very careful about blitzing because the moment you pull an outside linebacker, even if you send an inside backer, he's just going to release up the field and they're going to hit him within 5 and he'll go for 15 or 20. That's where he makes his money, right? And then inside
and in that type of system, the West Coast system, you're very familiar with it, with how Jimmy Johnson incorporated some of those concepts during the early 90s. I'm assuming you had seen a lot of those, even when he was at the University of Miami. He kind of brought that style, even though Bill Walsh, we know, is heavily credited with it. And that's the kind of stuff that Andy Reid's running with Travis Kelce right now.
Well, and the thing about the Chiefs, too, is, and the same can be said about a few quarterbacks in the NFL, but Mahomes is the best at it. Really, so Nebraska football, okay? I lived in Nebraska, so I'm not necessarily a major fan, but I watch them. They had a quarterback named Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech this year that they're trying out. The first game, there was not a single design rollout for this kid. And he's got great legs, right? And he had a 80-yard, 70-yard, whatever it was, run against Colorado, right?
Yeah, he had a big one.
You're right. And so what I'm getting at is that when you've got a guy like Sims who he's not capable of sitting in a pocket and just destroying a defense. He's not that good. He's not conceptually there. His arm talent is, his arm strength is there, but his arm talent's not. So there were too many throws across the middle. But when you look at a guy like Mahomes, you want to get plays where he's out of the pocket, right? In their scramble drill, the Chiefs scramble drill is best in the league. When it breaks down, the play breaks down, and Mahomes goes and starts creating with his legs. Oh my God, it's a circus, but it always works out somehow, right?
Right now, he has the greenest light in the NFL, and frankly, what we forget about is, he lost the Super Bowl, but everyone says, offensive line was bad. Although if that had happened to the Buccaneers, people would be celebrating that loss. When you think about the Cincinnati Bengals, they've had a horrible offensive line, but no one praises Joe Burrow that much. They gave me excuses for Mahomes. Heck, when Burrow lost the Super Bowl, there was a whole lot of drama. They were celebrating Cincinnati's downfall because, of course, who would ever pick Cincinnati to beat the big LA? And then, of course, we saw the Super Bowl just recently, KC in Philadelphia. What was the key? If you don't have an offensive line that can hold up, you cannot win a Super Bowl. Yeah, defense has to be dominant at some point, but if you don't have the offensive trenches solidified, you ain't got no shot to win. Even Peyton Manning's 2013 Broncos, you're very familiar with this. They had the weapons. They just didn't have all the pieces up front.
It was a defensive championship, man. That's all it was.
The Seahawks were able to dominate the line of scrimmage, but remember, when Denver did beat Carolina, not only was their defensive line the head of the game, but Denver's O-line was also very much improved, and they held up against a ferocious Carolina pass rush.
Yeah, no, it's a balancing act, man, in the NFL. You got to have it all. You really do. And speaking of Cincinnati 0-2, just like last year, it's like, man, here we are again. My 2 cents for Cincinnati is you just spent over $250,000 for this guy. I would make sure he's healthy before you put him back on the field, period. I know that they were talking trades with certain people for quarterbacks. I just think it sucks because, man, Burrow, his first year ACL. And he comes back in the second year, shows us what he's all about, right? And then last year
he should have won the Super Bowl against LA, but the league was not going to happen. That was not in the script, and God forbid they go against the script.
God forbid Stafford doesn't get his freaking ring, man.
God forbid LA loses to Cincinnati of all places.
Puka Nacua, though, for the Rams. Holy cow. He's nasty. His route
Where did he come from?
What was it? It was it Pac-12? Was it BYU?
No. What I'm saying, like, where the heck did he come from? For some reason, I don't know what it is with Matthew Stafford. Give him credit on this. He can make a lot of receivers look good.
Well, they found another Cooper Kupp, essentially, is what he is. He's conceptually what makes guys like that. When you see guys with 15 receptions in a game, are they fast? Yes. Can they catch? Yes. Are they dominant? Sure. Whatever. You don't see DK Metcalf with 15 catches in a game.
Nope.
The reason for that is because they're not always open. Guys that are getting 15 catches a game are always open. They're the shifty kind of guys.
Well,
yeah, but they see a cover 2 and they sit the route down. They understand spacing. They understand in a concept. If you can't hit the home run, where can you get something? And Cooper Kupp did that all at Eastern Washington, all the way up through his NFL career. I'm hoping he gets healthy this year. I love watching him play. He's just a guy that he's pretty fast. I don't want to take anything away from his athletic ability, but he's not a blow you away athlete. He is just so fundamentally sound. It hurts to watch because it's like from guys who have played, it's just so insane to watch someone that good all the time. And that's
Absolutely.
Puka Nacua. He was on every single fantasy waiver line after week 1, and I tried to get him. I'm sure 1,000 people tried to get Puka Nacua on the roster, and they couldn't get him because he was already gone on waivers.
That
So
waiver wire, man, that's the key. But speaking of wide receivers, Terrell Owens, former Dallas Cowboy.
how's he in the news again?
One of my one of my favorite receivers to ever watch. One of my favorites ever. He got into a little beef with old Mr. Smith. It involves the incidents regarding the termination of Max Kellerman, the former First Take co-host. Shuffy, you and I have read up about this, and for those of you who don't know, Max Kellerman was let go from First Take because former co-host Mr. Smith wanted him off the air, quote, saying that he's not a journalist nor an athlete. Why should they listen to him? And then Kellerman was ultimately let go from ESPN during the layoffs. Owens called out Mr. Smith. Smith threatened him with a rather, I don't know how to say this, like a teenage girl kind of tweet. And then, quote unquote, backed off, but not before trying to throw one last insult at Owens, calling him a sorry ass. Owens did respond and has been on a responding page to try and clear his name. And this is bananas. And Shuffy, I don't know how tuned in you are to that, and I'm just reading off what I've known, but whose side do you think the world should be on?
Well, so here's my 2 cents on this situation. We talked about last podcast actually, and I was gonna make a joke. It's like if we ever do a podcast that Stephen A isn't in the news, I don't, he's probably dead, right? He's always in the news. So we talked about Max Kellerman being one of the more shocking guys that got let go because his brand, I have a lot of respect for Max Kellerman, okay? Because to go up against an audacious personality like Stephen A day after day, morning after morning, and you have to play devil's advocate 90% of the time, you'd have to choose an argument to argue that Max maybe didn't even believe himself. But because of the show and the way it worked, it was Stephen A is going to argue this, and Max Kellerman was going to argue this. And so all things set aside, I'll always side with Max Kellerman. I always thought he was a good guy. I always thought he did things the right way. And even though I'd say 70% of the takes he had were outrageous, it was because that's how the show was designed. Now, when it comes to T.O., I'm a Cowboys fan. T.O. did a lot of good for us, right? Him and Tony Romo were unbelievable for a long time.
Yes, sir.
But he was always one to bring attention to himself. And Stephen A obviously has made his money bringing attention to himself. So I think both of them should just stay out of it. I mean, Stephen A, at the end of the day, like, there were a couple of the remarks that were made were absolutely classless, and we talked about that right before we started, and I don't want to bring those up.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable going too far into that, but, we brought up the ones that needed to come up.
The thing is, as a professional, and this is true across all industries in the world, not just sports, but if you're a professional like you and I sitting here podcasting, there's certain things you keep to yourself. And I would say both of those guys in their careers have not always been the best at that. And it bothers me because to whom much is given, much is expected, right? Like you've got a platform, both of them do. You got people that look up to you, kids, right, that enjoy watching you and listening to you, and then you go and get into some, like you just pointed out, like some teenage boy hormonal bullshit fight.
Teenage boy, teenage girl. Heck, it reminds me of the high school Twitter beefs that a lot of these people used to have growing up. And heck, I ain't gonna lie, I had a couple of beefs myself, but nothing to this level.
No, nothing that personal and nothing that
you're gonna expose.
Let's just say walking the tightrope of what's politically correct. I think they stepped over that line.
You're gonna expose T.O. See that he sued. I'm like, yo, man, I think you're the one making yourself look more of a fool than T.O. here, but you just can't see it over your eyes, which are so blinded towards me. And well, God forbid.
Now, another thing we should probably talk about, since we've talked about the media quite a bit tonight, is you got this new Skip Bayless angle, right, with Michael Irvin, Sherman, and who's the one other guy they got?
Keyshawn Johnson.
Yeah, Keyshawn Johnson. It's I don't care for that show, and I don't think a lot of people do. And it's largely because there's some Michael Irvin has his moments. Skip is one of the most hardcore Cowboys fans on the planet, but every time he tweets, it just makes me hurt on the inside because he's just delusional Cowboys fan, just like 75% of the fan base, right? And it's frustrating, and so I like what they're trying to do, and I love when like Kurt Warner's pretty good at what he does when he comes on and gives insight, right? And
Yeah.
Game Day with McAfee has been awesome, and so there's certain past players that have a knack for media, but there's also ones that don't, and Richard Sherman, I think, is actually pretty well spoken, if you ask me. I've not agreed with everything that guy ever said, but I mean, there's rarely people in the world that I would agree with everything that person said. So, but I think that Sherman out of that group to me is the one that has the most potential in broadcast or any kind of mediums, if you will. I've got a coworker that watches a podcast. She's a Seahawks fan, and he has a podcast every week, kind of goes over the Seahawks, and he's good. But when it comes down to it, man, it's so frustrating when these media personalities just piss off professional athletes because it's like, man, you're not going through the grind. You're not dealing with the freaking death threats in your inbox on Instagram. Freaking Madison having to deal with that this week. That's so bad. That's so bad because
the Vikings running back. I almost thank you for reminding me. Vikings running back Alexander Madison with all those death threats. Heck, even the Colorado State player. Now I'll admit that was a dirty hit.
It was late.
Not gonna lie. But that does not warrant him and his family receiving death threats. Like, what the hell is wrong with people?
I'm telling you, man, it's the emotions. If my favorite example to use is fan interaction. I don't know if anyone here has ever watched Ted Lasso. I don't know if you have.
I have.
It was season 9 or episode 9 of season 3. When Roy gets on and he does the interview and he says, "You don't know what's going on in these people's lives. It's not your place to ask what's wrong and why they acted the way they did." When Isaac got in the fans' face, McAdoo, because he was super upset and someone used the slur, right? Whatever. That scene when Roy Kent tells the story about how he basically pissed someone off, but he didn't know that his baby had been, they had a miscarriage or whatever it was. And it was super, touching home. That show is wonderful. If you haven't watched it, watch it. But that's what it comes to. Like with these kind of situations of Madison and then the Colorado State safety, I can't remember his name. He played a really good game. So I do want to make sure.
Which safety you're talking about? The Colorado State guy?
Colorado State, 43.
23 for Colorado State. I can't remember his name.
I think it was 43 was his number, the guy that did the hit.
Henry Blackburn.
Yeah, Blackburn. He played a great game.
Yeah, this kid's a very good football player. Dude, that was just a really, really bad decision. And
dude, CSU had that game.
Poor dude, Travis Hunter had a lacerated
like his rib or something, maybe.
He had a lacerated liver.
Oh, I didn't know it was that intense. No, I just thought he took a good shot in the ribs and probably had some bruised ribs, but that's wild. I didn't know it was that bad. But anyway, I want to say that CSU game, that was some of the best game planning I've ever seen. Because Colorado's offense, as far as I was concerned, was good luck holding them to 30. And they did it, right? If you take overtime out of that. I mean, they did everything. And Colorado State, just for the record, where I played ball in college, South Dakota State beat the crap out of Colorado State 2 years ago. FCS school pounded, their program was in the gutter. Right, getting blown out by an FCS school week 1. They lost by 20 points to South Dakota State 2 years ago in their season opener. So Colorado State to go put a product on the field against Colorado, the hottest team in college football, and hang in there as long as they did, and basically have it won. Crazy.
That was an amazing atmosphere. I ain't gonna lie to you, Shuffy. If we were fortunate enough, we should go to a Colorado game.
Oh yeah.
Before Prime ultimately bolts, because everyone says he's gonna bolt. Well, personally, I'd like to see him win a national championship at Colorado before he goes. See, he's
not going to go to the league. I know he's not. He won't coach the NFL.
That is true. Yeah, we got people from Deadspin rooting against him, saying that he lied to HBCU. I'm like, when did he lie to HBCUs? Y'all just mad because
you have a Power 5 offer on the table. Turn it down. Let me know. You won't.
Yeah, apparently because it's. Shannon Sharp said it best. The African American community, they're the last to congratulate because a lot of African Americans are angry with Deion Sanders for leaving an HBCU, and they were celebrating his downfall when they lost those bowl games, when Jackson State lost it, and now they're praying. I know one in particular. I'm not going to mention his name, a Deadspin writer. I ain't going to mention his name because I don't feel comfortable saying it. You probably know who I'm talking about if you see the tweets that I've done, but probably know who it is. But anyway, he is saying, buddy, hoping he loses. I'm like, do you have any idea what the hell you're doing? You're writing shit articles to begin with. You're going completely political, racially motivated here. And Prime has done nothing wrong, at least now. Now, he may have had his own things in the past. But this is why I hate reporting sometimes. And I'm had the opportunity to have a bachelor's and a master's degree. The one thing I learned is you don't want to start spreading bull jive. And some people say, oh, they're just reporting news. There's a difference between reporting hard-hitting news and being a complete JA.
Yeah, I mean,
you know this.
There's a difference between an opinion piece and a write-up. Like it's
a hit piece, yeah, a hit piece for crying out heck. We see hit pieces on some of the best athletes. Matter of fact, I think I told you this at one point when Brady won that Super Bowl against the Bucks. Hit pieces saying it was racist for him to win during Black History Month in February, which I thought was just some troll or whatever. But it turned out to be some credible writers that were doing that. I'm like, I'm going to stay away from this, but damn it, you want my opinion? That's bullshit.
Yeah. No, it's the media. It'll always be a centerpiece of conversation for people like us that are, we're objective fans. We sit here from the outside and we analyze what's going on and we formulate, objective opinions on things. And so, I mean, honestly, it's frustrating because, like I said, the moment the politics gets into sports, that'll be the end of sports the way we know it.
Yeah, that's why I feel comfortable doing these shows with you because let's be honest, I try to stay in the middle and I don't like cursing or whatever, but there comes a point in time where even I can't take it.
Yeah.
Like I've had my issues for example, I've had my issues with Aaron Rodgers because he beats the Bears all the time, but never once did I have a problem with, him off the field or whatever. It's like, except for when he said it's fun to beat the Bears that day, I'm like, okay, you're gonna get what's coming to you eventually, brother. But other than when he did with the I own you, I'm like, hey, you're right.
And you follow me on Twitter, like I'll get involved in the political conversation, yeah. But I'm more of like an anti-government guy. Like I hate the way that they do business. I hate the red or blue. I hate the half and half. Like all of us are in two categories. You can't do that, man. You can't.
That's the thing that scares me is that I don't know what you're like. More often than not, sports radio was like therapy for me in the mornings, going to school. Cause like growing up in Fairfax County, it's not exactly a sports capital here in Washington, D.C. per se, but when you're going to school, right? Usually you listen to like the local news channel or whatever. I'm like, to heck with that. Give me the sports radio before I go walk off the car in the Kiss and Ride parking lot. I need the sports radio. Give me that news. Then I can go into school with a clear mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I feel bad for the kids who want to do that because they can get away from all this injection kind of business. But enough of this. Before we wrap up today's show, the NFL is going into week 3 now. This is kind of a critical week. A lot of teams are 0-2. And very few have gone on to make any substantial noise after 0-2. One of the more notable ones being the 2007 Giants. I don't want to say what they did to the Cowboys. That's not fair, but we know what happened. Heck, I'm not happy about that Super Bowl either, but I digress.
Tiki Barber.
No, Tiki had just retired. It was Plaxico Burress. It was R.W. McQuarters. It was Justin Tuck in the D-line with Strahan, that stuff. But in terms of 0-2, we got teams like the Chicago Bears not going to do anything against Kansas City. They're going to go 0-3. And they just lost their DC. He resigned. But we have Cincinnati also 0-2, like you mentioned. But there seems to be a little bit of trouble brewing there, not because of any controversy, but the health of the franchise. They have not won a game since their mayor put out that stupid comment about Mahomes being the son of Burrow. They haven't won a game since.
Keep politics out of sports, please. I'm telling you, man.
I know, but I'm saying that was a tweet that was put out today. I was like, what does Mayor Purval have to do with this?
I don't know, man, but he must have done something because it's been going like this since he put it out. But
yeah,
as far as 0-2 teams, this is what I'll say. Bengals were 0-2 last year, and they won their division, and year before that they won the AFC.
yeah.
So
They got robbed in the AFC title game. We know that.
yeah. So what I want to get at is, for me, the AFC North is one of the most interesting divisions right now. And then the Bears up there, the NFC North is interesting too. But for me, I picked the Steelers with you that first podcast we ever did, right? And after watching Cleveland do what they did to Cincinnati in Week 1, I was like, wow, the Browns look pretty good.
But then they play the Steelers, yeah.
But Pittsburgh comes in and does what they do, which it was only a matter. The Steelers' defense is I would equate them with Dallas, Philly, Buffalo. Like they've got really stellar defense. So it's that AFC North division. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson back, they got some added weapons in the backfield. Finally, it's like last year you didn't even know any of the names of the guys that were on the Ravens. Freaking skill set guys, right? So but no Dobbins. So you got to keep that in mind. They don't have JK right now, and I think he's out for the year. I want to say.
Yeah, so, he's out with an Achilles injury.
Yeah, geez, that seems to be just as common as the old ACL. Yep.
Him and Nick Chubb just got that injury on grass. Dude, it wasn't even turf.
There was a picture side by side of Chubb's college injury at Georgia, and then the one he had the other. Oh my God, can you imagine going through two of those? I mean, both of those, his knee just floated.
I understand they happen. What's the need to make such a big deal about the images? Like, it says like they're putting it side by side. They're showing the replay. Now, the only time you show it once, and then if the doctors want to see it over and over again, because they're medical professionals, I get that. My uncle in Chicago, he's works in sports medicine. So if he's seeing those videos over and over again, that makes sense because he has to somewhat diagnose what's going on so he can prescribe whatever. Why are the fans obsessing over, we didn't see the video? Who cares?
It's why kids love Call of Duty so much. It's why in Ted Lasso there's this girl that works at the PR firm that loves when the guy gets a bloody nose. Like in the football, like she's like, yes, violence. Like it's a weird thing. It's like human nature. It's like people
Halo back in the day, remember?
Well, and it's like people that are way into like UFC. It's just I like watching it. It's badass. Those guys are badass. But
that is true.
But like that doesn't invigorate me anymore, the violence aspect of it. And some people are just like turned on by that. Like it's interesting. Yep. So also another thing I read, which it didn't get the media coverage it needed, there was a fan.
Oh, the Patriot one you're talking about, right?
Yeah, he died.
Yeah, he died because the Dolphins fan punched him.
It knocked him out so bad he never woke up. Like, that's just so insane.
His kids are in the presence. They just saw their father die.
Man,
but they're not.
World
but remember, they're not talking about it because if the roles was reversed, the Patriot knocking out the Dolphin, that's the front page of ESPN for the next 10 years. But because it was reversed, it's like, I'm like,
dude, it's freaking. That was crazy. I didn't know about that until this morning, and I was like, holy cow! Like
a kid saw their father die because of a drunk ass other fan.
It's just it just makes me angry that it's
succumbed to this.
Man, my big thing with my kids on my junior varsity team, and I'll leave you with this tonight, is we got in the locker room and I said, football is an angry game. It's a place that you could come and find peace from whatever it is that you're dealing with at home or at school or whatever it is. But I said, when you knock someone over, you better pick them back up. And it's humility.
Amen.
Humility over anything, right? And it sucks because stuff like that happens, and there's fights every week. You go on TikTok for 5 minutes, and there's like a B-roll video of like some fan that was 2 rows back of a one-on-one, like just rock 'em, sock 'em robots fight, and it's so stupid. And some of it's alcohol related, I'm sure, but even then, if you act like that when you drink, you probably shouldn't be doing that. So,
Yep. Well, anyway. Yeah. Anyway, that's going to be all the time we have for tonight. Thank you guys for listening. Shuffy will be back on multiple episodes, so he's not going anywhere. We're going to have a few females on this thing as well. There ain't no gender bias in the SG3 podcast. Heck, we might even pull some guys from our Twitter spaces. For those of you that were in the Twitter space with Shuffy, myself, and the others, we will have those guys on an episode. That is a guarantee. Nimmer, Julie, and Curtis will be on an episode with Shuffy and myself as we discuss our fandoms and why the Twitter spaces has been somewhat of a home space for all of us. But thank you guys for listening. From my guy Shuffy, this is SG signing off on the SG3 podcast. And as always, we call it like we see it. Do you?